nuclear weapons project.
Scott, I'll let you respond to Jonathan, but also I want to focus on the military achievements of both sides. So the numbers that I have is that Iran had 600 to 900 deaths with 3,000 wounded. They lost 14 nuclear scientists and about 20 senior Iranian military commanders, including top figures in the IRGC and the Quds Force. They, according to the IDF destroyed 2/3 of ballistic missile launchers, about 250 of them, and 1,000 ballistic missiles, which is the second. So there's two threats that Israel determined, or two objectives. One, to destroy nuclear capabilities, and the other one is the ballistic missile threat. So that's commenting on the ballistic missile threat. They've also destroyed 80 Iranian air defense batteries, which allowed them essentially air supremacy or essentially control over Tehran and Western Iran. And they've hit multiple storage depots, airfields, radar installations across Western Iran. Israel says they were wiped out. Now, what Iran did to Israel, they launched 550 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones. I think all drones were intercepted, and about 90% of ballistic missiles were intercepted. 31 hit, 28 people were killed, 3,000 wounded, and 9,000 Israelis were displaced, 39,000 reported property loss. Based on those numbers, would you say, Scott, it's a fair point to say militarily, moving away from the objectives, which we're going to discuss, destruction of nuclear facilities, whether regime change was an objective, whether Iran will pursue a nuclear weapon more secretly without IAEA monitoring, putting those aside, we'll discuss those afterwards. Militarily, do you think Israel beat your expectations and showed supremacy in the war against Iran, and even can I go as far as say, embarrassed Iran with the successes they've had, or you strongly disagree with my statement there, and I think Jonathan's points as well?
Well, first of all, the source of your information seems to be almost exclusively from Western sources, maybe Israeli sources. So
I've put, I've only used, I'll just make a quick correction. Most of them were, because Iran didn't share any military casualties.
The point I'm trying to make.
Exactly. Except, so the only source I had, because I wanted to look at both sources.
A lot of funerals,
the only information.
A lot of funerals today.
Don't interrupt.
Shouldn't
interrupt.
There's that, but there's also the only information that Iran released, Scott, was the number of people killed. Iran says about 610. Western sources said 900. But otherwise, they didn't share any other information. So yes, they are.
Nice real-time fact check.
But my point is, if you're bragging about killing Iranian civilians, then that proves that the Israelis weren't as precise as they claimed.
All right, now he's changing. First of all, he's questioning the sources. Now he's saying that, the source. He's essentially admitted that he was wrong about his assessment of the sources, and now he's saying that Israelis shouldn't be proud of the fact based on those sources. So it's okay. I mean, it's a fair point. It's a reasonable criticism to make. I don't have the facts, so I'm not going to get into every military attack in Tehran. From what I understand, the vast majority of it were military infrastructure and personnel. Of course, clearly there were civilians around in the area as well, and we're not going to have the clear facts for a while. So this is I'm not going to really dwell too much on that. And B, yay! I mean, look, Israel has the best military equipment in the world. Much of it is American provided. Some of it modified by Israel for its own use. Israel has, I think there's no doubt about it, one of the better intelligence services in the world. I know, I worked closely with them for 4 years. So if Israel wasn't able to flex its muscles effectively, then shame on Israel. And I think what we saw is Israel flexing its muscles very effectively. We would expect Israel to be able to carry out operations of this nature. So, I mean, because Israel did what it's capable of doing, we're supposed to say, wow, they won the war. War is an extension of politics by other means. Jonathan, you've studied Clausewitz. You know this as well. So if we're going to sit here and just count numbers, then you're looking at the wrong thing. It's a fair point.
The question is, where are both nations right now in the aftermath of this conflict? That's how you do it. You don't count numbers. First of all, as a former battle damage assessment officer who was involved in Desert Storm, I will tell you right now that the ability to exaggerate the impact of your military is universal. I know for a fact that on week 2 of the Gulf War, we had killed 64 Iraqi Scud launchers, and we were adamant about it. We had the pilots, we had the videotape, we had everything, when the reality is we'd killed 0. I'm not saying Israel didn't kill anything. I'm just saying that the numbers that come flowing in from battle damage assessment in the immediate aftermath of conflict oftentimes differ from reality. I know this as somebody who participated in the Gulf War and then had an opportunity to walk the ground in Iraq afterwards and see the actual targets we were hitting. And the difference between reality and what we thought we did was night and day in many cases. Yes, we destroyed a lot of things, but the other thing we learned is the Iraqis are pretty good at evacuating sites. And I would imagine that the Iranians are just as good as evacuating sites. And if you don't know where the evacuation site is, then you really didn't accomplish much, did you?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I think it's a fair point to make. I do think that there is a big difference between the technology that was available to us during the 90s, during the Gulf War, the era he's talking about, and today. I think it's a lot easier to assess that kind of damage. So, I would take that into consideration, but in general, I do think it's important to be cautious with any of this stuff during the fog of war, because they call it that for a reason. So it's a reasonable point, but should be noted that there is, we're in 2025 and things are a little bit different.
So I think we need to be careful about the numbers game right now. Israel did what it was expected to do. Israel is a very modern force, professional. Some of the best pilots in the world, best intelligence. If they didn't do this, then there's a problem. But Iran survived. Iran survived, and Iran continued to fire missiles up until the final day. I mean, their final barrage was a devastating barrage. And it's something that Iran, I think, is prepared to continue if necessary. So this isn't a case where Iran was crawling to the negotiating table. In fact, if I remember, it's Benjamin Netanyahu was making the phone call to the United States saying, we need to stop this thing now, because there's other factors at play, like, I know, maintenance of F-35s. It's very difficult to maintain this combat, sortie rate with maintenance. The Israelis were exhausted. They were exhausted politically. It was very difficult for the Israeli government to explain what was happening. And you shake your head, no, Jonathan, but I mean, why did you shut your borders? Why did you shut?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of sustainability of, fighting an air war, obviously, I don't think you can do it forever. I don't think the Israeli government felt like it needed to stop right away. I mean, you could just slow down the war and stretch it out, so to give time for the repairs. I mean, we have an open airspace and virtually an open air highway towards Iran. So again, it really just depends on what the goals were. Like, what else? Regime change wasn't in the cards for the moment, so there was no point in continuing this war, I think, without taking a huge risk, right? It's not clear that regime change would be a good thing. If we knew that it was going to become a liberal secular democracy, of course, that'd be a different thing. But that's not clear. The IRGC could just take over, and that'll be worse. So I think the Israeli calculation is do a lot of damage, push back the nuclear weapons program for a couple of years, and take it from there. Hopefully, the Iranian regime moderates its position, and just hopefully, it just kind of moves away from trying to annihilate the state of Israel and really just focuses on itself. We don't have to be friends, but kind of do your own thing, and we'll do our own thing, and we'll leave each other alone. I think it's not impossible that will happen. Now, in terms of the Israeli society being exhausted, that doesn't. It's true, Israelis are tired of war, but it doesn't mean we're on the verge of collapse. The Israeli society is super resilient, and Ritter's he's speaking from a distance. He's he's not from me. I can just tell you, since I live here, no one I know is no one I know is on the verge of collapse, right? We're prepared. If we have to continue this war, Israelis are ready to continue the war. We'd rather not, but I mean, especially if there's not much to gain from it. But if it was necessary, we'd be ready to go, and that's what it comes down to. So let's see how John responds.
What do you base that on, Scott? Being on the ground, do you speak Hebrew?
Oh, I don't speak any word of Hebrew. No, I don't speak Arabic. I don't speak Farsi. I speak American English.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're going to make a claim about Israeli resilience and Israeli society and you don't speak the language, it's not that you can't make a claim, but you should be very careful of basing an entire position on that. Because, again, as someone who lives here, I can tell you that Israelis are resilient, and it seems to me he doesn't really think that that's the case, or at least not nearly to the extent that I do.
Okay, so with all due respect, you're quite limited, and I don't think you should be commenting on Israeli society or whether or not
I was
Israel
there for 4 years. I pretty know Israeli society pretty well during
I don't think you
wartime.
do.
and after.
I don't think you do. And if you say that you do without knowing the language or the culture, I think that really puts in question your judgment and your ability about everything else that you say. I don't think that I understand Iranian society. I don't think that I have a good handle on the Iranian opposition or the cultural fabric or the ethnic fabric of Iran because I don't speak their language and I've only studied it a little bit. So I tread very cautiously when I speak about Iranian society. You sitting here and pontificating and lecturing and telling that Israel was on the verge of breaking. Listen, buddy, we've been fighting for a year and a half against some of the most horrible enemies, and Israeli society has been in and out of bomb shelters for the better part of at least a year, and Israelis are still strong. Israel is fighting. We rose up after 12 days of being in shelters, dusted ourselves off, and business is back as usual. Stores are open, and kids are going to school, and people are back at working. So, I want to be respectful here, and, I wouldn't challenge your credentials as a battle damage assessment officer. I don't know, it was a long time ago since you served, and you've done other things since then. But I would, think you should be a little bit more careful when you assess or pass judgment about things that I don't think you have access to raw information, and you have very limited knowledge about. I think that's like a professional remark.
Yeah, listen, I think it's fair. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's definitely an opinion. Um, Again, I think ultimately, if you're really going to make a judgment on a society, you should probably speak their language pretty well. You should probably have visited the country recently. From what I understand, he's probably hasn't been here in a long time because he hasn't really had a reason to. This is to understand a culture, you need to regularly engage with it, and you need to, at least on some level, understand the language to access all the media and things like that. So I can just tell you, in the end of the day, Israel is a warrior nation. I don't think that this war is phasing Israelis. Someone who communicates with people all the time here. We all want it to end, but if we needed to keep going, we certainly can keep going. I don't think that can be put into question.